Hi, my name is Frankie and I'm a member of the UKYCC Systems Change Working Group. The UKYCC recognises that the climate catastrophe is deeply linked to the current system and that we need systems change to tackle climate change. Sadly, our current system of capitalism is destroying the planet, but not only that, it is doing that for the benefit of the very rich so that they can accumulate more and more wealth at the expense of the rest of us. We are building and campaigning for and promoting ideas and actions that we believe will bring around this systemic change, and in this video we introduce a few of those and have a brief discussion about how we believe they can bring around the systems change that we need. There is no climate justice without social justice. These topics are broad-ranging and we recognise the deep embedded links between the climate catastrophe and other injustices and oppressions around the world.
9 to 5, Monday to Friday, is for many a typical working week. Over the course of our lives, British workers commit an average of 3,515 full days. That's 84,360 hours to their work. A significant proportion of this is unpaid overtime, with the average worker spending a total of 4,512 unpaid hours at work over the course of their career. One of capitalism's most enduring myths is that it has reduced human toil. This myth is typically defended by comparing the modern 40-hour working week with the 70 to 80-hour week common in the 19th century. But the medieval pace of work was far below modern standards. Holiday leisure time in medieval England took up about a third of the year. Consciousness of time was much looser, and time had much less economic value. In other words, time had not yet become money. So there's nothing innate or natural determining the time we should spend at work. Workers have fought for leisure time and shorter working hours since the advent of capitalism. The existing working week and working hours laws only exist today because campaigners and workers' unions organised to win an 8-hour working day and holiday time. We believe it's time for us to move towards a 4-day working week. Why is this relevant to systems change? Well, our economic system systematically extracts the time we have. In exchange for wages, we give employers our labour, efforts and skills. Working with technology, workers produce services and products to be sold on the market, which is where they derive their profits. Our current system is built on the labour of workers, who spend their time generating profits, largely for the benefit of a tiny, wealthy minority. But our free time is fundamental to our well-being and sense of freedom, and overwork is detrimental to our mental and physical health. 1 in 4 sick days in the UK is the result of overwork. Moving to a shorter working week would allow people more time to spend with their friends, family and communities, and allow people more space and time to take part in creative projects and participate in the democratic process. Many people in the UK are in precarious jobs, working with low pay, temporary contracts, and sometimes on a false self-employed basis, far from the 9 to 5. But another group of people are consistently overworked. Studies have shown there is enough work to go round if we can just close that gap between those who want to work less and those who want to work more. And in turn, this would reduce economic and social inequalities. With big job losses as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, addressing this balance has never been more urgent. Combined with other flexible working policies, like working from home, a 4-day working week can also help create a more sustainable society, with less commuting and the unnecessary consumption associated with it. A 4-day working week could also have positive impacts on gender equality. On average, women do 60% more unpaid labour than men. Shortening the working week would promote a more equal balance between paid and unpaid work, reducing the double burden that is the reality for many people with significant caring responsibilities. So, has this been tried before? Some organisations have already experimented moving to a 4-day working week with no reduction in pay. For example, Microsoft Japan ran a trial where some employees were given 5 Fridays off in a row. Productivity jumped by 40%, meetings were more efficient, and 9 in 10 employees said they preferred the use of a shorter working week. So, could this change? Could the 4-day working week become a reality? There are signs that the idea is picking up momentum. Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand's Prime Minister, suggested employers could consider a 4-day working week in response to the COVID-19 crisis, which she said would certainly boost the tourism industry. In the UK, During the December 2019 general election, Labour floated a policy of a 32-hour working week with no loss of pay to be delivered within 10 years. Of course, a 4-day working week is not a silver bullet for all the problems society faces, and it's just one measure of many needed to create a more equal, greener and happier society. But the fight for a shorter working week is part of the historical fight for economic and social justice. We have won it before and we can win again. It's time to take back the time we are owed.
Fundamentally, capitalism works as the free market creates wealth which trickles down through society, benefiting the whole of society from the richest to the poorest. Modern day capitalism, however, the trickle-down effect of money is broken. It's broken via tax evasion, tax avoidance, and money going into offshore bank accounts. Exposures such as the Panama Papers and others show how the wealthiest are not paying their taxes in society and are being diverted to offshore bank accounts. This has created huge levels of problematic inequality, destroying democracies, affecting the working people, and also destroying our planet. The top 1% have become untouchable and rigged the financial systems in their favour to favour the rich and the wealthy. This is evidently clear in the current global pandemic, where the billionaires and the rich have increased in wealth while the rest of us face mass and terrible economic downturn. The financial and economic system is broken. It is engineered to favour the rich and the wealthy. Young people today are facing a climate catastrophe, a global pandemic, and mass economic downturn. We can't buy a house, we won't be able to pay back our loans, and most importantly, in a few years, we won't have a livable planet to survive and thrive on. As governments print money to try and save the failing economy, inflation increases and money loses its buying power. Inflation doesn't affect hard assets such as property, gold or Bitcoin. Again, this is a system which favours the rich and is disproportionately unfair to the poor. New decentralised financial systems are emerging in the forms of cryptocurrencies. They're beginning to be adopted by individuals, investors and businesses. Cryptocurrencies are a decentralised peer-to-peer financial system, removing any interference from a governing body. Adoption of some of these new systems could replace some of the old corrupt systems and lead to a more equal and fair society. This will help to reduce inequality, increasing the livelihoods, increasing the well-being and the economic outlook for society as a whole, and also go into funding objectives like the Green New Deal and a just transition to a greener, fairer and more equal world.
What is the purpose of a private company? Well, they exist for one reason and one reason only, and that is to increase shareholder wealth. To take an example, a soft drinks company does not exist to sell nice drinks, it exists to maximise the wealth of its shareholders, and it does that by selling soft drinks at a profit. The problem with this economic model is that it is destroying the planet. I'm going to talk about an idea called economic democracy, and it is the radical idea that economic power is still power, and that power should be democratised. So economic democracy, this democratisation can take various forms. One of these strands looks at the ownership of the sources of economic power, these private companies and corporations, and a real-world example of those would be a cooperative. A cooperative company can look very similar from the outside, but the difference is that rather than being owned by distant shareholders or large institutional investors, they are owned by their members, and their members are therefore empowered to have a voice within that company, and the members could be the producers that produce the goods, they could be the consumers that engage with that cooperative, or they could be the workers that work within the cooperative. So you can have investor-owned private companies and you can have membership-owned cooperatives. You can think of this as sort of shareholder versus stakeholder. And now these private companies that are investor-owned are driven by maximising the wealth of their shareholders. They are driven by the profit motive, which is the beating heart of capitalism. This makes them short-sighted, and it makes them unable to see the wood for the trees. So this is how you end up chopping down a forest to sell lumber without really realising or factoring in that you've destroyed local lives or livelihoods, you've destroyed a natural habitat, and you've released more carbon into the atmosphere. So a cooperative or a membership organisation where stakeholders are empowered to have a view and a voice, and they can raise concerns, they can raise issues, and they can operate that cooperative in a human way, means that these cooperatives can be radically more sustainable because they have human scale conscious at the heart of them.
Poverty, inequality, dignity for all. These are a few of the many global challenges of the century. What if I said we have a solution to tackle these challenges? A solution that I'm sure you've heard of. A solution that 20th century thinkers from Milton Friedman to Martin Luther King have all theorised. A solution called universal basic income. At its core, UBI is a sum of money that will cover a person's basic needs, such as the roof over your head or the clothes you wear. It is money that is paid out to every individual, regardless of their employment, income, or social status. UBI envisions a world where basic income is a fundamental right to all citizens. But why? It is a challenge to the status quo, a challenge to a system we currently live in, a system that leaves millions of working people feeling insecure and a feeling of worthlessness for those who are out of work. That is a system that we currently live in, and it's a system that might see absolute poverty double by Christmas. We need something very different. We need a system that will support everyone with a layer of security. And universal basic income can provide this. It can provide a basic living for those who provide community benefit through volunteer work. It can provide a lifeline for someone who has caring responsibilities, from young children to a sick parent. It can provide the necessities to individuals changing careers, such as the green jobs of the future in a post-pandemic world. As a young person graduating this June, in possibly one of the worst recessions in recent memory, a basic income will support me to find a job that matches my skill. A universal basic income puts people before profit and allows people to balance both their work and their lives. Not only that, it's a well-researched and proven idea. From Mexico to Malawi, researchers have found that with UBI you see better health outcomes, lower crime rates, and improved attainment for those in education. For instance, the 2018 Ontario Basic Income Project. The 4,000 recipients of basic income, when compared to other sample groups, saw reduced mental health admissions to hospitals, as people no longer felt as financially burdened, and in the long term, people were able to stay in education for longer and earn more skills. These results have been replicated around the world, from pilots in the global south and ready UBI projects such as the Alaskan Permanent Fund in America. And in rich global north countries is an affordable policy, and it won't discourage work. These are facts. We need to move money away from the massive tax breaks and bailouts to big corporations and invest in big ideas such as UBI. These is what will solve the world challenges. A basic income as a right is the cheapest, most efficient, and most dignifying route out of poverty. I don't know if this short video is enough to convince you, but here are a bunch of links of all the evidence, and I'm sure you'll be blown away. With the perfect mix of trust and ambition, this is possible.
So I'm going to talk about how abolition is a key systems change idea and crucial to climate justice. So to try and summarise abolition, which is it's a broad school of thought, but abolition or the abolitionist movement was the movement to end slavery, and it continues to this day as a political vision with the goal of eliminating imprisonment and policing, which disproportionately oppress Black people, while creating lasting alternatives to punishment and imprisonment. It's both a practical organising tool and a long-term goal, and it challenges the belief that caging and controlling people makes the rest of society safe. Climate justice is an evolution of the environmental justice movement, born out of civil rights activists in the US fighting against environmental racism and poisoning of their communities and land. Racial justice and Black liberation must always be at the heart of climate justice, which is why abolition should be central to climate justice work. It makes no sense to fight for climate action that will protect Black communities from natural disasters and air pollution while staying silent on their murders and wrongful incarcerations at the hands of the police. At their core, both abolition and climate justice are about building safe and sustainable communities, and that is why movements must work together. Abolition is a systems change concept which is essential but an often overlooked part of climate justice. I'll go historical for a moment. Colonization justifies violence and genocide and mass injustice in order it to function, to be successful. But this has a multitude of forms. It created the economic model which exploits natural resources and caused the climate crisis, and also the post-slavery prison industrial system and policing in the US. Injustice and exploitation in all these forms are an essential part to ensure the economy continues functioning for the benefit of the few. The prison industrial complex, as it exists now, highly racist and violent, is an essential part of this system which simultaneously destroys the environment and disproportionately imprisons people of colour for profit. For example, some connections between the two, those in American prisons are forced to go out and face the impacts of the climate crisis head on. In California, the prisoners were forced to go out and face the wildfires and tackle the wildfires for the benefit of the rest of society. And yet upon release, they are barred from these very same jobs. Further, there is a pattern in the US where corporations find land, exploit its resources, tear apart the ecology and exploit it for all it's worth. And then they'll build a prison upon it. So policing and imprisonment as it exists now are toxic systems that prevent the development of safe, sustainable and self-sustaining communities. They're an essential part of this capitalist system which profits off the unpaid labour of prisoners and exploitation of natural resources. The problem with these systems is that capitalism and colonialism justify violence. They say it's inevitable. And what abolition does is challenge this. Abolition is about honouring life as incredible and amazing and taking a radically empathetic approach which de-justifies this need for violence and dismantles policies and prisons. Climate justice is about providing response to the climate crisis which dismantles exploitative systems, prioritises the most marginalised and builds back the lost connection between people and the environment. To really imagine and build both safe and sustainable communities, we need to bridge these movements and centre abolition and black liberation in all of our climate justice work. Looking forward, so at its heart, defunding the police and abolishing prisons is a bold, systemic change to correct injustice. And in this way, it's not so different from a Green New Deal. Indeed, there are lots of connections that can be made between the two, with actual impact on the ground. For example, shrinking police budgets means there's more state money and financial resources that can be put into community care work, social workers, teachers and caregivers in black communities, which would be especially useful when trying to tackle the impacts of coronavirus. And here we can look at what Naomi Klein said about green jobs. So often when we think about green jobs, we think about like working on a solar farm and nothing else. But actually, if we rethink what a green job is, e.g. care work, teaching, art, social work, these are all low carbon jobs. These are all jobs that are great for our communities and emit no carbon. So if we can kind of rethink and think about these bridges, we can build more bridges and actionable outcomes between abolition and climate justice with impacts for society, with positive impacts on society on the ground. Thank you.
Ah, hello. Modern society has evolved alongside advances in technology. The use of phones and social media is now ingrained into our daily lives, with people on average checking their phones 86 times a day, and over 90% of us checking our phones and looking at social media within the first hour of waking up each and every day. Social media and digital communications were designed to help us connect with one another. However, studies are increasingly showing social media leads to an increase in anxiety and depression. Young people are increasingly expressing the feelings of dissatisfaction, of the fear of missing out, loneliness and sadness, which is all linked to social media. God, I love memes. Anyway, in a somewhat more sincere tone, our social media use and data is farmed and being used to manipulate society and manipulate elections. The spread of false information and disinformation and lies through social media is now prolific throughout society. In 2020, climate denial groups used Facebook advertising to reach 8 million people spreading lies about the climate catastrophe. Exposes of groups such as Cambridge Analytica or the widespread mass surveillance programs which go on all around the world show how our data and our social media use is being used against us and being used to control our democracy. Social media is being used as a tool to spread lies and to create division in society. Stricter regulations can lead to changes in behaviour and bring about legislative reforms which can help reduce the spread of information and the collection of our data. Global legislation can help encourage systemic change. For example, changing default setting on phones to have notifications reduced or turned off, and to reduce screen use time, and the constant collection of data can alleviate some of the stresses we experience from our devices. Recent rulings handed out by the Court of European Justice are a victory for privacy campaigners and go some way to halting the mass surveillance we have in society. Further regulations such as these can help protect privacy and bring about changes in policy which can limit the use of our data and farming and collection of our data in the manipulation of elections and the spread of disinformation.
A fly on his head? You just couldn't write it. At UKYCC, we believe that making some simple changes to policy and regulations that tech and digital companies have to abide by could make some positive changes in the way we interact with our devices. Increased policy and regulation on tech and social media companies could help increase community resilience and help us fight the climate catastrophe. It will also help reduce the spread of disinformation and lies. And finally, will limit the manipulation of our democracy and elections. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting. For more information, check out our systems change statement on the website, and to reach us on our socials or via email. Thanks again. Have a good day.